every once in a while, some of the things I share, I feel like are they're kind of like accumulations of a long series of thoughts. And today is some of that. I feel like I've tapped into a little piece of vision for what God wants for us, and I want to try to help. I want to try to communicate that this evening. What I want to talk about is moving past compassion. Compassion is a really critical component to God's people, how we are with each other and in the world, because it's such a central component of who Jesus was. He was compassionate. You know, I remember he says that he looked upon them with compassion as sheep scattered without a shepherd. He looked on the rich young ruler when he walks away, and he wept because he had compassion on him. Compassion is a very, very important emotion to feel, and it's not common, and it's difficult to achieve. We were speaking just in our agape today, as you all know, that how do you have compassion when 50 Muslims are killed in New Zealand? Like, I'm not connected to that. I'm not connected to that country, those people. I don't know how to feel about that except for bad, like just generally bad. I don't know how to connect with it at a deeper level than general badness. But that's not compassion. That's a different thing. To feel bad is not the same as compassion. Let's look at a few scriptures about compassion. Let's start in Colossians chapter 3. I'm going to look at several different texts here in the epistles just to kind of ground some thinking about how we should feel toward each other. Colossians 3 and verse 12. Put on, therefore, as the elect of God, holy and beloved, bowels of mercies, kindness, humbleness of mind, meekness, long-suffering, forbearing one another and forgiving one another. If any man have a quarrel against any, even as Christ forgave you, so also do ye. And above all these things put on charity, which is the bond of perfectness. Let the peace of God rule in your hearts, to which also ye are called in one body, and be ye thankful. A lot of those callings of the elect have to do with compassion, bowels of mercy, kindness, even humbleness of mind and meekness, long-suffering and forbearing and forgiveness. All of those are part of, you can sum them up in the feeling of compassion. To feel, moved for each other and kind to each other and in our proper place with each other and humility. All those things are an exhortation that we have to be compassionate toward each other. And what do I mean by that? I mean, just think about what all those things mean. It means to understand one another, really, is what it comes down to understand one another, where people are coming from, why they have the struggles that they have, what's going on in their life, and how it would feel to be in that place. That's essentially compassion. Flip over to Hebrews chapter 13, and we'll see this same kind of heart again. Hebrews 13 and verse 1 says, let brotherly love continue. Do not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unaware. Remember them that are in bonds, as bound with them, and them which suffer adversity, as being yourselves also in the body. Now that's a little more than compassion. That's identification. It's remembrance and identity. He wants us to call to remember. Hey, remember those people who are in bonds, but doesn't stop there. It's not just remember them. Remember them as if you were bound with them. That it was your body also that was suffering. That's a step past, right? That's a little more than just thinking about. That's identifying with. Over to 1 Peter in chapter 3, we find this. In verse 8, finally be all of one mind, having compassion one of another. Love as brethren. Be pitiful. Be courteous. Not rendering evil for evil or railing for railing, but contrariwise blessing, knowing that you are thereunto called, that you should inherit a blessing. He that will love life and see good days, let him refrain his tongue from evil and his lips, they speak no guile. Let him eschew evil and do good. Let him seek peace and ensue it. So there's just directly in black and white. Have compassion one of another. Love his brethren. Go with me to Romans. We'll go backwards. Chapter 12. And just real briefly, just this one little tiny snippet here. We're in Romans 12 and verse 15. It's these, he gives the spiritual gifts, and then he gives some kind of like commentary about them. And this one right here in 12:15 says, rejoice with them that do rejoice, and weep with them that weep. But I said before, the compassion is a difficult, sometimes it's a rare thing. Like sometimes when we're doing well, we don't want to think about people that aren't doing well. When we're not doing well, we don't want to think about people that are doing well. There's an intrinsic kind of selfishness to our emotions that we're kind of stuck inside of ourselves. And the call of the Christian community is to step outside of your own place and look around at others. So maybe you're having a hard day, but somebody else something really great happened. Linda's going to get her driver's license tomorrow, and even if I have a bad day, I can rejoice with Linda when she gets her driver's license. Amen. We're naming it and claiming it, Linda. Even that ability is a Christian ability, to step outside of myself and feel someone else where they're at. And that's important, and it's special, and it's valuable. Rejoice with them that rejoice and weep with those who weep. To feel, just like it says in Hebrews there, to feel some identification with people's pain and suffering. To be able to connect to them and feel it with them. But flip over with me to just a couple chapters in 15 and look at what it says here. 15 and verse 1. It says that we then that are strong ought to bear the infirmities of the weak and not to please ourselves. Now that's a different level. This bearing is a different level. It doesn't mean even to feel. It means to help carry. And that's what I want to talk about today, how we move past compassion to bearing one another's burdens, to really being grace in each other's lives, to actually making a difference. And it makes a difference for people to have compassion. It's been vitally important in my life when I've had difficulties for people to have compassion on me, to understand where I'm coming from and why things are hard. That is very meaningful. But there's a different level of community, of connection, of valuing and loving one another that steps past compassion and says, I don't just feel what you're feeling. I want to work where you're working. I want to help make things different in your life. I want to get involved in what's happening and make things different together. And that's a whole different level. And I think that when I say those things, when I think about these things, that's something that we all want to do, right? We all want to be that in each other's lives. We all want to make a difference in one another. We want to be grace to each other's lives. We want our brothers and sisters to be stronger and better and more capable and more able because I'm here. Like, that's my job. We all want that. But how do we do it? What does that look like? And how do we act that out? How do we do those things? He says that the strong ought to bear the infirmities of the weak and not to please ourselves. So that's an interesting first step. Let every one of us please his neighbor for his good to edification. For even Christ pleased not himself, but as it is written, the reproaches of them that reproached thee fell on me. For whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the Scriptures might have hope. And the God of patience and consolation, isn't that interesting? The God of patience and consolation, the consoler, grant you to be like-minded one towards another, according to Christ Jesus. That you may with one mind and one mouth glorify God, even the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. Wherefore receive ye one another, as Christ also received us, the glory of God. I think that thought continues on throughout that chapter, but I'm not going to read it. But it's important there that he beckons to us by the God of patience and consolation, that if we want to bear the infirmities of the weak, that we should treat each other like God treats us, with consolation and with patience. So those are first prerequisites. If we want to bear one another's burdens, we're going to have patience and consolation, to console, to be there, to help, to help pick up the pieces. Like things aren't going well, and I'm hurting, and it's not good. And here I sit with you, and we talk about it, and we work through it, and we find solutions. That's what God does with us, right? Like I show up at his door, and my life is a mess, and nothing works, and here I am, and he says, "Come, let me help you fix it. Let me help you put it in order. Let me help you make it right." Consolation and patience. Flip over to Galatians, and after this I want to talk about some practical steps, some shoe leather stuff. This is a curious passage, and I'm interested to talk about it afterwards if anybody has any thoughts about this. I've been playing with it for a while now, and I haven't found a good resolution. But there's some important pieces right here. Brethren, in verse 1, if a man be overtaken in a fault, you which are spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of meekness, considering yourselves, lest thou also be tempted. Verse 2, bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. That's pretty simple, straightforward stuff. Hold up what your brothers are struggling to hold, and by that, you'll fulfill the law of Christ. That's pretty straightforward, simple stuff. I get that. For if a man think himself to be something, when he is nothing, he deceives himself. But let every man prove his own work, and then shall he have rejoicing in himself alone, and not in another, for every man shall bear his own burden. So why the contradiction? Why bear one another's burdens, but you're all going to bear your own burden? It's a strange construct. I think so far what I've come up with is that there's supposed to be a balanced perspective here. That kind of like we look at the balance of husbands and wives and loving and submitting, like these reciprocal obligations are back and forth, that it's all of our obligation to bear somebody's burden that's struggling with it, but all of us have to feel like our burdens have to be borne, like we can't give up, it's our responsibility, we have to do what we have to do, and it's balancing this notion of common responsibility to each other and personal responsibility to work in my own life. I think that's what's happening here. But if anybody has any other ideas, I'd be open to that. So, so there we see there's these general virtues of compassion, and there's this next step that's bearing, that's holding up, that's helping That's getting engaged and getting your hands dirty and getting involved in where there are problems. And I want to talk about what that means practically. Because, I'll get to why because. What does that mean to bear one another's burdens? I was talking with somebody, and I actually had a conversation with a few different people this last week. And I talked about how this issue in general is what kind of spurred this message today. But I was talking about how do we help each other? How do we actually do more? And what are we doing well and what are we not doing well? And I think that one of the things that we have developed as a people, not even just here, but across the churches in Boston, one of the things that we have managed to create is an environment where people are trying to be open and honest, where we can hear from each other. And so we sit at our agape table and we share what's important in our lives. And there's a sense of support and mutual concern and compassion, right? We have compassion there. I feel like you all have compassion on me. When I sit before you and I tell you things aren't going well, or they are going well, or I'm struggling with this temptation, or I fell into this sin, or this happened, or this is going on, I feel a very, very much, I feel a sense of compassion. Like you care, you're interested, and you're for me. And I feel that way about you all. But how do we transition from listening and caring to fixing, to healing, to working through those things? And I just am trying to imagine, how do we move past listening to each other to working with each other? How do we roll up our sleeves and get our hands dirty in each other's lives to try to make it so that time is not just a group therapy session? That's really important. It's really helpful. When things are tough and you got to sit in a group of people and just talk about what's going on in your life, that's super helpful. But it doesn't produce solutions. How do we get to the next phase where we're actually creating solutions for each other's life? So I say, hey, we're trying to figure out as a family how to make life work with all these children and chores and things, and we're just crossing paths and things aren't getting done and everybody's frustrated. And you all sit there and you say, yeah, that must be tough. I wonder how they're going to work that out. And I appreciate that. But what's the next step? Maybe the next step is, hey, have you tried this? Well, when I was little, we did this and this worked. And like it turns into a conversation, not just listening. It turns into something proactive instead of something just compassionate. Like, hey, tell me, how are you doing this? Where does the conflict happen? What happens when this happens? Like that when I hear you guys share difficulties in your life, I'm not just listening. I want to help you find answers. And I think that that's a step that we could take corporately as a people together. And I know that we do some of that already, but I want it to be explicit. I want it to be purposeful. I want us to have an expectation that this is the place where we can come to find answers and solutions. That all the gifts that are in this room and all of the shared life experience have a value, a net value, that can bring something to bear in my life that will make things better. That I can use your life and your experience and your wisdom to help craft solutions to my dilemmas and problems. And I think that can move us forward into a next step. Now here's where this gets deeper. My vision for the church is that we become known as people with answers. The conversations I'm having this week were focusing around like needs in our society, like what's happening in the world today. Why are people so broken, and how do we minister to those things? And those are conversations that we've been having in this room as well. How do we position ourselves in a way that we can help our broader community outside of ourselves? How can we make a difference in other people's lives? The Queen of Sheba hears about Solomon and his wisdom, and she packs up a cartload or a boatload or 7 boat, I don't know what she brought, a bunch of cool stuff, and says, hey, Solomon, I brought you some gifts. I want to ask you some riddles. I want to find out if you're really as smart as they say you are. I want to find out if you have the answers that you're reputed to have. And she walks away, and she's amazed by his wisdom. And it glorifies the nation of Israel. And I think that there's something about that narrative that God wants us to have that place in society. That he wants us to be the people of wisdom. That he wants us to be the people of light. The people that can shine light on dark things. That can look into the deep things of people's hearts and say, here's the problem, and here's a way to move forward. And the way that we're going to develop that is if we learn how to do that in each other's lives. So there's 2 critical factors to that kind of presence, right? It would be that we're practiced in doing that we learn how to see what's happening in people's lives and how to peel back the layers and find out what the root causes are and really investigate and dig in, and that there's this kind of like working environment in our fellowship together, and especially in our spiritual kinds of work, like the Lord's Supper. That's the place where we're rolling up our shirt sleeves and we're digging in and we're working to find resolution, solution, and conclusion and move forward. And that process of us being able to do that in one another's lives will help all of us be better at that, but also will reveal who's actually has a lot of skill and insight into those matters. And so that we know who to call. When we went through these health issues this last winter, in December and the beginning of January, there's ramifications of those things that Erica and I are still working out. Like, I learned things about myself through that stress. Erica has dealt with things about herself through that stress, like dealing with like even mortality and all kinds of like big stuff. And we don't know how to. I don't know who to talk to about that. Like, I'm feeling horrible. Like, we almost all died. Like, it's all, woe is us, right? Woe is us. That's how we felt. Woe is us. Who do you call when you feel like woe is us? We don't want to, like, we don't know how to have those conversations. Who do you call and just say, if tomorrow you woke up and you spent the next week depressed, barely able to get out of bed, you don't know what's wrong, you don't know why, you don't know how to fix it, who do you call? Who do you call and say, here's what's going on, it's not working, I don't know how to live. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We haven't developed that among us. We don't know how to do that. We don't know how to have those conversations yet. And if we can't do that here with ourselves, if we can't create that environment among ourselves, then we can't be the people of light. That people are going to say, oh, I know, I have this friend. He's a weird guy. He dresses funny. His family's kind of weird, but they're super sweet. And I got to know them, and their marriage is amazing. And I know you're having a marriage problem. Maybe you call that guy. Maybe he'd be willing to help you. Like, that's what I want. That's where I want us to be. I want us to be people of light that have answers, that can help find resolution to problems. Because that's what Jesus was in the world, right? Like, they look at him and he has something to say. And the conclusion of listening to Jesus' teaching is not to get on your knee and ask Jesus into your heart. The conclusion is to do what he says and find your way into wisdom and truth. And we can do that. The other part, so it requires that we learn those skills among ourselves, and it also requires that we make relationships outside of ourselves. That we're connecting to people outside of our community. That this neighborhood and this town and these places where we work and shop and live and do and be are places where we're connecting to people intentionally. Where we're learning the people that are around us, where we're engaging and are, The friendly people with a smile that want to talk and want to say, hey, what's your name? How are you today? What's going on? And make connections with people outside of our circles. Those are the two things that are needed. That we have something to say. I had a girl reach out to me this week, a girl that Eric and I have known for a long time. She's a very abused girl her whole life. She's abused by her biological family. They put her into foster care, and she was abused in foster care. She just is a shell. And she reached out to me because somebody that we all know, that we both know, was arrested for abusing children in the area where she was, in the family that she was fostering. And I was sharing with her, I was trying to be compassionate. That's what I was trying to do. And I said, I'm so sorry that you and those other children were so badly hurt. And her response was a conditioned response, a conditioned cultural response to a girl who's grown up in religious circles. Her response was, well, God has a reason. And I wouldn't be as strong a person as I am if I hadn't gone through those things. And I moved past compassion and I said, no, God does not have a reason for that. God has no reason for that. It has nothing to do with his plan. He didn't orchestrate that. He wasn't involved in it. He didn't want that. There's nothing about God's desire that was involved in that. I want to make it clear that that has nothing to do with God. And those are the kinds of experiences that we have to do to be able to sow these seeds of moving past compassion and having something to offer to impact people's lives and make a difference. How do we do that? I mean, they're all things that we know, but we need to continue to practice and exercise. When Jesus' disciples couldn't cast the devil out of a child who was possessed, Jesus goes and casts him out and says, "You faithless generation, such cometh not out but by prayer and fasting." Well, we don't have any record that Jesus spent 2 days praying and fasting before he showed up there. He was ready when he met the situation. He got up how many mornings early before any of the disciples and walked around and talked to God because he was ready, because his life was prepared for those moments. And we need to prepare ourselves similarly. Here's another practical thing that I've talked about with several of us, because it's a concern I have for our community of people. My whole life, when something tragic happens, when a friend is hurting or someone dies or there's some tragic accident or people in misery, whatever the horrible thing that we imagine is, when it's somebody we care about, we go to them and we say, "I'm so sorry," and we pray with them, and sometimes we cry with them, and when we part ways, we say, "I want to help. If there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. I want to help." I don't know how many times I've done that, because I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to do. What else am I going to do? I want them to know that I'm there for them. I want them to know that I would stop at nothing to relieve their pain if there's anything that I could do. That's what I want them to know. But it doesn't really help. I was talking to David about this, and David said that his father taught him the difference between how to care for people. That it's one thing to say, "Call me if you need help." It's a different thing to say, "I'm going to call you tomorrow at 9 and make sure you're okay." It's one thing to say, if you need anything, let me know. It's a different thing to say that next Tuesday at 2 o'clock, I'd like to bring 3 of my daughters over to clean your house for 2 hours. Is that okay? Like to find proactive solutions to present to people so that there's something, so they don't have to work out the solution. That's what it means to bear their burden. I'm gonna create a solution. I'm gonna help you. You don't know, because the guy in trauma, he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to create a solution. He's just trying to survive or work through his stuff or figure out how to go forward. He doesn't know how. He doesn't know what helps. From the outside, I should look in and say, what would help? What would help? How could I be there? How could I do something proactive to make the situation better? That's what we need to do. That's the step of moving from compassion to bearing. That's the move forward that I want us to natively, instinctively respond with in each other's lives. There's a lot of us that have been thinking about this I don't know if it's a phenomenon or not. The commonality of people that struggle with depression and how few real answers there are in the church for those issues, and why we don't have good answers to those issues, why we don't know how to work people through those problems, why we end up just saying, if you need help, call me. That's probably those kinds of emotional issues are where I've been most prone in my life to say, if you need help, call me. I'm here for you. Because I don't know what else to do, and I don't know why we don't have better answers for that. Why we're not working in those issues. And I think that the reason that the scriptures are oriented the way they are, because if we have compassion, it's supposed to move us to action. You ever notice where Jesus says, the fields are white unto harvest. Pray, therefore, the Lord of the harvest that he send laborers into the field. That's always been strange to me. Why didn't you just say, the fields are white unto harvest, go pick the wheat? That would be the intuitive thing to say, right? Look, the crop's ready, go get it. He didn't say that. He says, the fields are white unto harvest, pray. Therefore, the Lord of the harvest would send laborers into his field. And that's strange. I think he's trying to create desire. Because the things that you pray about are the things that you care about. And if you sit there and you look at that field and you say, the fields are white unto harvest, Lord, send laborers, Lord, send laborers, Lord, send laborers. At a certain point, you have to realize, I got capable hands. I got capable feet. Maybe I should go out there. And then it's self-motivated. It's not a directive. It's self-motivated. I want to be there. I've created the desire within my heart to do that work. And so I don't need a minder. I don't need a foreman. I don't need somebody to tell me what to go, where to go, how to go, what to do. I have created a desire in myself for the harvest. I want to get it in, so I'll figure out my own ways to do it. And that's a better worker than just saying, go do. And the same thing applies to here in these principles of compassion. If we develop these emotions for each other where we really are caring and interested and involved in each other's needs and concerns, that sense of compassion will do the same thing. It will cause us to want to find solutions in each other's lives. Tom told us today about his coworker from New Zealand that he was just able to talk to and share concern with and give a hug to, and the difference it made. That's exactly the kind of stuff I'm talking about. That's moving past compassion into action. I don't want to just talk. I want to be involved. I want to do something. I want to at least be at the same place with you. I want to share your concern and hold it up. I thought of a lot of different Bible stories. I thought a lot of the things in Jesus' life where people reach out to him and there's something that people recognize in Jesus' life and ministry, that they know he's the place to go for help, that they know that he's the source and the answer. He creates that through his compassion. He creates that through his involvement. He creates that through his connections. He creates that through his teaching and concern. And he uses all of that at his disposal so that people get the message, this is the place for answers. And then they come. They come in strange ways. They come yelling. They come being dropped through roofs. They come sneaking through crowds. They come to touch him. They come to hear him. They come to see him. But they're coming for resolution. They're coming for help. And I really think that the way to create that environment and what it means for us to love one another, what it means for us to have sincere charity, what it means for us to be of one mind and one voice and one purpose, is to be that in each other. To be grace. Cain slays Abel, and God comes to him and he says, "Where is your brother?" And the answer, the audacious answer, is, "Am I my brother's keeper?" And it's like an indictment, right? It's an indictment. I'm not responsible for him. The heart of the murderer in his defense of himself is, it's not my job to take care of him. And if we ought to be anything, it's the opposite of that. If we ought to be anything, it's, I am my brother's keeper. That I feel a personal weight of responsibility for your health and well-being. That I'm intimately connected to whether or not you are well. I just thought of something. Okay, yeah, you don't have to turn there, but 1 Corinthians 11. And when it talks about communion, this is their love feast, their agape, and their communion. He says, "Now in this that I declare unto you, I praise you not, that you come together not for the better, but for the worse. For first of all, when you come together in the church, I hear there be divisions among you. And I partly believe it. For there must be also heresies among you, that they which are approved may be made manifest among you. When you come together, therefore, in one place, this is not to eat the Lord's Supper. For in eating, everyone takes before other his own supper, and one is hungry and another is drunken. What, have you not houses to eat and drink in, or despise you the church of God, and shame them that have not? What shall I say to you? Shall I praise you in this? I praise you not. And then he gives his ordinance of the Lord's Supper. And then he goes on, he says, but let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of that bread and drink of that cup. For he that eateth and drinketh unworthily eateth and drinketh damnation to himself, not discerning the Lord's body. I think that means a whole lot of things. But one thing for sure it means is that we are supposed to be perceptive of Christ's body when we're together in that space. That's Christ's body. That's Christ's body. That's Christ's body. I value them like I value Christ. For this cause, many are weak and sickly among you, and many sleep. For if we would judge ourselves, we should not be judged. But when we are judged, we are chastened of the Lord, that we should not be condemned with the world. Wherefore, my brethren, here's the resolution: when you come together to eat, tarry one for another. Wait on each other. Work through with one another. Be at one place with one another. Be in common with one another. Make it harmony. Do what it takes that when you're there, it's harmony. If somebody's hurting and the cords are broken, it's our job to fix it and make harmony. Last one is in John 14. You can turn there with me. In verse 8, Jesus says, or actually Philip says unto him, Lord, show us the Father, and it sufficeth us. And Jesus says unto him, I haven't been so long time with you, and yet hast thou not known me, Philip? He that has seen me hath seen the Father. And how sayest thou then, show us the Father? Believe thou not that I am in the Father, and the Father in me? The words that I speak unto you, I speak not of myself, but the Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. Believe me that I am in the Father, and the Father in me, or else believe me for the very works' sake. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me, the works that I do, shall he do also. And greater works than these shall he do, because I go unto my Father. And whatsoever ye shall ask in my name, that will I do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. And if ye shall ask anything in my name, I will do it. If you love me, keep my commandments, and I'll pray the Father, and he shall give you another comforter, that he may abide with you forever, even the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it seeth him not, neither knoweth him, but you know him, for he dwelleth in you, and shall be in you. I will not leave you comfortless, I will come to you. Yet a little while, and the world seeth me no more, but ye see me, because I live, ye shall live also. At that day ye shall know that I am in my Father, and you in me, and I in you. I can't think of anyone in the whole gospel record that set their eyes on Jesus as the answer to their dilemma and found him, went through whatever it took to get to him, and did not receive an answer to their concern and their need. He's saying that's because this work isn't mine, it's the Father's, and the Father's in me, and I'm in him. And if you believe me, you will be like that too, because the Spirit dwells in you. I'm going for your good, and you all are going to do greater works than these. We're supposed to have an increase in potential. The church corporate should be doing more than Jesus did in his flesh. That's what he said. That's the uncomfortable truth, right? It's just the uncomfortable truth. The church corporate is supposed to be doing more than Jesus did when he was walking around in Palestine, because he was limited to one time and one place, and we are all over the place with the same Spirit. And I'm imploring us to exercise ourselves with that Spirit to be the answer to each other's needs, to be the resolution to each other's difficulties, to bear one another's burdens, so that we can do those things outside of this room as well. So we have to know what each other's burdens are. We need to care with compassion about those things. We need to pray about those things. How much do you pray for your brothers and sisters during the week? How much of a concern is it day to day in your time with God to bring the concerns that you know are burdens in this room to the Father? That's a question worth answering. And seeking grace to be not just for that problem to be fixed, for those burdens to be borne, but a way to do that with my own energies and passions and efforts and work. Let's pray together. And I'll have Earl come close us. Heavenly Father, we want to receive your truth and your light in our lives. We want to hear and respond to and be worthy of your calling on us. We want to be sensitive to our place in your scheme of things. We want to be everything that you've called us in this place to be, and we recognize this evening that it is our obligation to bear one another's burdens, to start at compassion but not to stop there, to go on into bearing with one another and forbearing one another and working together to make a perfect body. You even gave ministries to the church for that specific purpose, that we would all come to a perfect man. Father, I pray that you'd help us all to see our place in that. I pray that you would pour out your Spirit upon us, that we would receive power from you to be ministers to one another, to be servants to one another, to be healers to one another. I pray you'd give us insight and wisdom beyond our perception and beyond our years. good of our brothers and sisters. I pray, Father, that you would pour out a spirit of humility upon us, that we would not live in shadows, that we would come to the church open-faced, honest, and real, to find the help that we can find in your people and in your spirit and your word. Father, we bless you for the help and aid that your church has been to us in our times of need. There are so many times when the prayers of the saints have held us up and have healed our bodies, have literally saved the lives of my children. I want to return my debt of gratitude. I want to be faithful to your people. I pray that you'd show us how. In Jesus' name. For his good and for his church.